Hi, welcome to Firebird Tech. As always, my name is Nick. Today is going to be a video about the Sony Vaio, my Sony Vaio Fit 15A. And today's video is going to be a service manual, pretty much. A video service manual. So it's going to be sort of steps as I go through pulling apart the laptop of each of the components which you'd be able to service at each step and what you need to remove in order to service individual parts. So things that we covered, of course, are the common things, and there's actually been some requests through YouTube comments about certain things that I need to address, particularly the keyboard. I can't remember username off the top of my head. I think it was either a string of numbers or someone's name. If I find it, I'm just going to leave it in the corner here, because they've specifically asked for me to do a video on this, so I'm doing a video. So that's that. So common stuff like battery, keyboard, monitor, touchpad, things that are going to wear out. Also stuff like maybe a bit more obscure, like the cooling fan, motherboard, heat sinks, or heatsink in this case, and general stuff like that you want to look at when you've got the laptop open nevertheless. We'll also cover things like upgrading the hard drive, / what's in this one, which is a hybrid drive, and stuff like that. This stuff will be covered. RAM, of course, will also be covered. So as we get into there, we'll sort of see about each part as we go. So this is sort of a very lengthy teardown, but also showing people how to service certain parts. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll go to the bench view and we'll go through everything as we go. So without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is, of course, a variety of tools. So I have 3 different sizes of Phillips. So we have, hang on. There we go. We have 0, 1, and 2. Simple as that. Or is that 0? Yeah, so basically that's the way it's going to work. So that's your really small, your medium, and your fairly big. This is for stuff like taking away apart your screen, stuff like that. This is the one you'll use the most. This sort of middle medium one. And then this one you'll probably use for some of the really small stuff. I'm grabbing it just in case, but that's what it is. When you're cleaning out heat sinks and stuff like that, when we get that far, you of course need a little brush. A non-conductive one is a lot better, but as long as it's fully removed from any of the electronic components, you shouldn't have an issue with using a standard brush like this. Just make sure it's fairly clean before you go using it, because you don't want to go contaminating the heatsink and making it go all funky. And the last thing you'll need is, of course, a small flathead. I actually don't know the measurements on this one. This is one of the ones I've had for eons. Just to do a bit of prying and stuff like that, to give you a bit of leverage on some stuff. Sometimes you'll need it for like freeing the heatsink, because sometimes they thermally bond them. They don't just use thermal gunk. Talking about thermal gunk. You will need some form of, if you're taking off heat sinks, you will need some form of thermal grease to replace what's there. You cannot, and I stress this again and again and again, you cannot, under any circumstances, dry fit a CPU or GPU or even some modern RAM, like GPU RAM, in a laptop without thermal grease, because you will kill it, as simple as it is. So if you are removing the heat sinks, make sure you clean everything off with whatever you've got. I've got cotton tips, but that's okay. Cotton tips, a non-lint cloth, and some alcohol works very, very well. When we're talking alcohol, we're talking medical grade alcohol. That stuff works fairly well. But you will need some form of thermal grease. Let's see if I can't get this in focus. So this is just, come on, be nice. Okay, so this is just GC Extreme, pretty normal stuff. Let's just turn down the exposure. This is just GC Extreme, fairly standard stuff from G-Lid. Fairly standard stuff. That's very much all you'll need. So without further ado, let's go focus back on the laptop. We'll get into it. So from my review video, if you haven't watched that already, go watch it. It's one of my very few videos on my channel, so you can go look at the channel if you want. There isn't really that much to these laptops anymore. Especially with the way Sony's built it, there isn't that much. So really, just like before, there's your rubber strip on the front and your 2 feet on the back. That will expose all your screws. So step 1, remove every bit of rubber you can see. So that's the bottom long strip across here, and the 2 very tall feet up top. These ones here, they're very tall. Other thing to note though is that these actually go in a certain way. I don't think we can probably get that on camera, but I'll try. Is the fact that there is a small arrow on them. This one's actually pointing upwards. I don't know, you guys watch this in HD, you'll definitely be able to see it. These are on a specific way, so don't try, when you're putting it back together, don't force these feet on, or else they'll just fall straight back off, or you'll damage the feet, or stuff like that. But there's 2 of these feet at the back, which are all held on by adhesive. If you want to, you can just get some double-sided tape and put some more double-sided tape in these grooves if you want to do that. That's totally acceptable if you want to make sure that the stuff is there. But the adhesive's pretty good for maybe 2 or 3 goes around. It's not too much of an issue. Come on. Thank you. Sorry about the overexposure there. So with that out of the way, what we'll do, because it's way too far away from the table for me. Sorry about that. So there's 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, and 4 that you'll need to take out. There is another 4 here, 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 and here, and then there's these 2 up here. Now they are 3 different sizes, so if you've got like a magnetic tray or something, you may want to make that note, is that there are 3 different sizes of screws just to take off this case alone. So the 4 at the front are different to the 4 black ones that are here in what I call the midsection, and the 2 that are underneath the feet are also different. So I'll just pull out one of each to show you. So to give you an idea, we're going to try to go back up close again. So what we'll do is we'll go up nice and close. So you can see that the ones underneath the front rest, which is the top one here, are not painted, but the ones underneath, the one at the bottom is. Other thing that's different, if I can even try to get this on camera, is the fact that they're actually 2 different lengths as well. The ones that got the black head on them, the ones that go in the midsection, are longer. It's really kind of hard to get this on camera, but they are a little bit longer. Just something to note. So short, non-painted, go along the bottom here. Medium sort of length ones that are black on top are your 4 middles, and then your big screws at the back here are big and fat and very, very chunky in size. So they're these ones. They're different to everything else. So just keep that in mind when you are taking it apart, to make sure you don't screw up that, because if you put the middle screws, sorry, I'm out of focus. So if you put the middle screws in the front, you're going to bust right through the keyboard, and you're going to have weird holes in the front of your keyboard, and that doesn't look nice. So without further ado, I'll continue to open. These ones under the tape can be a bit difficult. Sometimes they don't want to come out completely, they just like sit there underneath the tape. That's fine. That just means they've captured, which is totally cool. But pretty much if they don't come out normally, you just want to keep swiveling until you hear the click. So that's that. That click means that the threads have separated from the bottom plastic. It's just a nice way of checking that the screws are undone, even though they won't come out as per se. So, pro tip for you. And then you just want to go around and remove all of them. One thing that I do recommend for the people who are planning to pull this apart is please don't use power tools. Particularly when you're putting the screws back in, you don't want to go using power tools, because you're more likely to over torque the screws or put stress on here. Finger tight with a decent screwdriver is more than enough. Okay? So I'm gonna have to stop this camera soon. Okay. So now we've got all the screws off, we now need to go around the edges and pry that off. I'm going to do that just after we come back from this, because I need to go change my battery. So I'll be back in 2. Sorry about that. So there's 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, and 4 that you'll need to take out. There is another 4 here, 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 and here. And then there's these 2 up here. Now they are 3 different sizes. So if you've got like a magnetic tray or something, you may want to make that note, is that there are 3 different sizes of screws just to take off this case alone. So the 4 at the front are different to the 4 black ones that are here in what I call the midsection, and the 2 that are underneath the feet are also different. So I'll just pull out one of each to show you. So to give you an idea, we're going to try to go back up close again. So what we'll do is we'll go up nice and close. So you can see that the ones underneath the front rest, which is the top one here, are not painted, but the ones underneath, the one at the bottom is. Other thing that's different, if I can even try to get this on camera, is the fact that they're actually 2 different lengths as well. The ones that got the black head on them, the ones that go in the midsection, are longer. It's really kind of hard to get this on camera, but they are a little bit longer. Just something to note. So short, non-painted, go along the bottom here. Medium sort of length ones that are black on top are your 4 middles, and then your big screws at the back here are big and fat and very, very chunky in size. So they're these ones. They're different to everything else. So just keep that in mind when you are taking it apart, to make sure you don't screw up that, because if you put the middle screws, sorry, I'm out of focus. So if you put the middle screws in the front, you're going to bust right through the keyboard, and you're going to have weird holes in the front of your keyboard, and that doesn't look nice. So without further ado, I'll continue to open. These ones under the tape can be a bit difficult. Sometimes they don't want to come out completely, they just like sit there underneath the tape. That's fine. That just means they've captured, which is totally cool. But pretty much if they don't come out normally, you just want to keep swiveling until you hear the click. So that's that. That click means that the threads have separated from the bottom plastic. It's just a nice way of checking that the screws are undone, even though they won't come out as per se. So, pro tip for you. And then you just want to go around and remove all of them. One thing that I do recommend for the people who are planning to pull this apart is please don't use power tools. Particularly when you're putting the screws back in, you don't want to go using power tools, because you're more likely to over torque the screws or put stress on here. Finger tight with a decent screwdriver is more than enough. Okay? So I'm gonna have to stop this camera soon. Okay. So now we've got all the screws off, we now need to go around the edges and pry that off. I'm going to do that just after we come back from this, because I need to go change my battery. So I'll be back in 2. Okay. Now we have a full battery, we'll start prying this open. So the way you want to start with this is you want to start where you can get your fingernails in, if you've got fingernails like me. And you want to find a spot where you can lever it up a bit more than the rest. That's a bit different for everyone's laptop, so you just need to go around the edge and find somewhere where you can just pick it up enough. Oh, sorry, I'm way off camera. Just pick it up enough that you can actually put a screwdriver underneath and start releasing the clips, because it can be a bit difficult. I haven't opened this up in a while. Okay, final tool required. Okay, if you're having trouble opening it, a sort of round edged scalpel is really handy for this sort of stuff. It's just a model of scalpel. It can be handy just to get underneath these spots and sort of get everything out. There we go. So now they've got one corner in, we can now grab the flathead screwdriver and just start not necessarily breaking, but releasing the clips that hold the this case on. Now, something you have to be careful of is this headphone jack, or this combo jack. It actually goes into it's not recessed behind this edge of the plastic. It's actually flush with the edge of the plastic. So you can't just take this case off vertically, i.e. straight like this, because you will break it straight off the board. The first time I opened this laptop, I did it. I actually had to resolder my headphone jack on. So it's a word of warning for everyone else. If you are planning to pull this laptop apart, you need to start on this edge, or the power plug side, and remove that way, because, or else you will break that headphone jack straight off the motherboard, and that's not good. So as I said, we just keep working around, releasing those clips. We just keep working around, working around. Come on, release. That's being a pain as usual. There it goes. So now we just release the rest of the clips and we just slide it off this way and then pick it up. That's what you're gonna do. And that removes all of this. So that removes your bottom cover. Whilst you got the bottom cover off, you can just check to make sure that the bottom screws, if they got captured, these screws here that were our two ones behind underneath the tape have got captured and they're nice and tight. You can push them through if you want and keep them to one side, but I'm not going to. So now we're in. Now the first thing you need to do is think about what's where. So we'll just do a bit of an internal tour of this whilst we're here. So of course we have this big effing battery down here. This is our main battery. So this is something that's very easily repairable, or not necessarily repairable, but replaceable in this laptop, because it is just screws and there's just a push fit connector on the top edge. That's something that's very easily replaceable and repairable. It's something that shouldn't take anyone more than like literally 5 minutes to do. You saw it's taken me a few minutes to open up the laptop, just because I'm going through it, but if you don't need to go through it, then like explain it. It doesn't take that long. The battery is just a few screws, so we'll remove that now and go through that. Now this is the same screwdriver, I think. Nope, sorry. It's the smallest of your screwdrivers that you've got, or the 3 that we're using, to remove the screws. Now one thing you need to note, if I can get this on camera, is the fact that this screw here, so one in from the edge, so if we zoom back out, you can see that this is the edge screw, the one in from that on this side, and the same thing on this side, so this is the edge screw here, so one in from that. As I was saying before my camera cut out, do not put screws in these 2 locations here, because they are the screws that are in the top cover. They're the ones that are inside the top cover. So the top cover actually helps to hold on your battery, which is handy. So we'll zoom all the way back out again, make sure we're in focus. Yep, okay, so with the smallest of the screwdrivers, you then just take out all your screws and keep these separate, because of course they're going to be different to everything else. I'll do that now. This is where a magnetic screwdriver comes in handy. So there's a few around the outside edge. I mean a few by quite a few. So this battery is, as it says there, 15 volts, 3170 milliamps. It's actually a 4-cell battery, so those who are watching who know their battery tech. This is a 4S battery. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4 cells, as you can see, for 4S, 15 volts. I'm pretty sure that's the way it works, or it could be 5 cells. But as you can see, you can physically make out the cells where they are anyway by looking at where it's wrinkly, as it is. So as we keep going, I've actually covered the removal of the battery in my main review of this laptop, but I'm going to do it again in this video just in case those who haven't seen that video don't have to go back and watch the hour-long review of this laptop. Continuing around. So the other things that are here whilst I'm removing that are fairly easy to remove are stuff like if you blow up a speaker, you got 2 speaker grills here. Sorry, one here, one here. You got your NFC here, which is virtually useless because it's underneath the laptop. It's practically useless. You also got the other battery. This battery here is for BIOS settings and stuff like that. I won't remove mine, but if you're having issues with like the clock not like the when you start up the computer and it's asking you for a new time and date, as I was saying, before, like, constantly, then you need to replace that battery. You can usually pick them up from, like, hardware stores, that sort of stuff, for usually a couple of bucks. I actually have a whole bunch of them down underneath my table in my usual tool spot, just because I come across old motherboards that I need them for. So, with all the screws removed, all you want to do is you want to carefully just grab the tab right next to the battery. I'll zoom in on this so you guys can see it. Guys and gals can see it. Right here, and we'll focus in. I still need to make that f-stop larger. So you can see here that we have a little battery snap, or the battery connector, and there's like a screw tab next to it. All you want to do is you want to gently pick up on that battery tab, make sure everything comes free, and make sure you haven't forgotten any screws, like I just did. Oops. So once you've removed all the screws, you want to just gently lever up on this, and the whole battery will just come out and come free. Now, this is a very large battery in general, so we'll just move the laptop back so people can have a look at the battery. This is a very large battery, which means you've got to make sure that you recycle it correctly, because it is lithium batteries. So please, if you are doing your own repair and you've got this battery out of your computer, please make sure you follow all local regulations and dispose of this battery back properly, because this thing, if disposed of incorrectly, can hurt people, particularly because it's lithium. So that's the battery pack. I think it is a 5 cell, going by all that stuff, but that's the battery pack out. So the next one everyone keeps asking me is about the keyboard and the mouse pad. They're the last things to come out. To get to the keyboard without leaving any visual scratches or marks on the computer, you kind of need to remove it from the underside, unfortunately, because you can get to all the clips much easier once the system's out. So yeah, in theory, if you've got the right tools, you can remove it from the front, but it's not something that I would recommend necessarily. But yeah, that's just the way it is. The touchpad, of course, needs to be removed from the inside, because you can see there's big ass screws there. So the next thing we'll remove, because we'll just move from front to back, are the speakers. Now, one speaker plugs into this daughter board, and the other speaker plugs into the USB daughter board. So it's just remembering which one they are. They're actually labeled, so AWR and L. So this is right side, left side, when the laptop's in its correct orientation. So without further ado, we will remove this. These are held in the same size, so smallest of the screws, and you just need to go around and buzz them out. Though, one thing to note though, is they're very shallow screws. So they don't take much to take out. Another thing to note though is the connector can be a bit of a trouble sometimes. So just make sure you apply constant and even pressure to the connector to make sure that you don't damage it. There we go. So that's one speaker out. Now it is loose, but as you can see across here, there's a wire that runs all the way across into this speaker. So my mistake. Some models will have the speaker cable on this side, but some are connected to the one speaker cable. I've seen this in both, so that's why I mentioned it before, that sometimes I don't clear them. So I was saying that with these speakers, some are connected to here and here, but this one in this case has a wire going all the way across. So before we can remove the speakers, we have to remove all these other little front boards. So first of all, we'll start off with the sensor board over the indication LED board over here. So this is just a little sensor board. Sorry, wrong screwdriver. Which has the smallest screws, of course. So it's just two little screws here. Are we slightly overexposed? Yes, we are. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that all these different boards have all different... Okay. So all these screws are different for each independent board. So just something to think about when you're removing stuff is try to keep the screws with their appropriate board. Another thing to note though, which I didn't even know about, is the fact that all of these ribbon cables happen to be double-sided taped down. So something to think about when you're removing it is the fact that all these are double-sided, which may cause some issues. In this case, what's happened, I don't know if it's going to come up on camera nicely enough, is the fact that this this piece of double-sided tape has gone over this wire. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice on one side of the double-sided tape so that can stay where it is, so I don't have to remove it. We just want to pick up the other side. Nice and simple. So most times double-sided tape will come with the cables, but sometimes it doesn't want to. So let's continue, shall we? So that's one of our little boards out. Okay. For some reason one goes over there and then one goes underneath over there. So that's one board out. The next board we have to take out is of course our NFC board. Sony, please, next time you design a laptop, seriously think about the placement of NFC. This NFC module can only be accessible if you put the NFC device that you're trying to use with this device underneath the laptop. Like, seriously. Only way this thing is even half useful is if it's in tablet mode. Just to give you an idea. Okay? Like, seriously, think about it. Just think about it. Give 2 seconds thought to the usage of it. Anyway, enough about my rant. Let's remove this thing. Again, with the smallest of screws. And again, a different set of screws to everything else. Now, for people who are wondering how this NFC module actually works, what we have is we have a data line here, similar to USB. We have the actual NFC device here. This is actually doing the protocols and all that sort of stuff. This one here is actually your antenna. That's doing nothing more than it's just a powered antenna. That's all it is. So, let's continue to remove this. Come on, there we go. So that's all that removed. Oh, there's another thing I need to cut. And there's just another bit here. So as you can see here, there's just another piece of tape covering our speaker cable that we're trying to remove. So it's just a little bit of tape that we just got to delicately remove. Hopefully my big head isn't getting in the way. Just delicately remove and separate that from the plastic underneath. This is where really tweezers would come in so handy. There we go. So now that's separated. So a knife like this can come in handy. Let's shorten the figures. A knife like this can come in handy, but not always, okay? I didn't put it in the initial tool list because it's not something that everyone should like have, but it's definitely something that can be handy in a pinch. Okay, so we'll continue to remove another bit of tape here. And once that's done, we should now be able to unsnake almost all of the speaker cable. There we go. So that's another one of these done. So we just pick it out there. Another one in there. Gosh. There we go. Okay. And that is now the speakers removed. So, speakers now removed. And you can see, if we zoom out a little bit and refocus. So they are fairly simple speakers with some decent bass tubes and stuff. If people want my comment on the sound quality, it's adequate. It ain't great. Like, I wouldn't want to watch a movie on it, but it's good enough for general everyday use. If I want to watch movies and stuff, of course I have my Sennheiser earbuds, or I have my really nice, very old now, but really nice Philips SBC HP 250s. Nice set of headphones, but they're getting a bit old. Okay, so without further ado, next piece. So we'll finish removing the NFC and the indicator LEDs. If you ever have to replace the indicator LED board, then there's something else wrong with your computer, because these really shouldn't die very easily. The only thing I can think of that would actually die on this little tiny board here, if we zoom in, bring the laptop over. The only thing I can think of that would actually die on this thing is this itty bitty little chip here, which I have no even idea what that is. It's an SEW, or is it a 332 or 223? Anyway, so that's just the only thing I can think of that would actually die on this board. So that's just something to think about. So without further ado, let's keep removing this. So we'll just go pop up because it's a bit easier. And we'll do the same thing with the NFC. We will actually have to remove these cables a bit more thoroughly later to take out this mouse pad, which will be something we'll do in a bit. So that's NFC removed, which I may just keep removed because it's a bit of a nuisance and doesn't really work. So I think the next thing to take out would be this trackpad in there. Okay, so to remove this trackpad, we are going to have to not remove anything. Okay, sweet. Only thing we'll have to actually think about is this little TP cable here. So we just want to remove the mylar tape that's holding that down. Why is there a button underneath? Huh, I just noticed something. With this trackpad here, so we've got our input cable here and all our logic board here. God, there's a hell of a lot of glare on this. So we've got the input cable here, we've got a little logic chip here, which is produced by Synapsys, so it's a Synapsys pad. Then there's a button here, which I haven't noticed before. So yeah, something to note. So we will, there we go, just something to note. Much better. So that's just that. So all we have to work with is this shielding plate here. There's a bit of shielding around it, which is understandable. So all we want to do is we want to probably get our little scalpel tool. And just pick up that bit of it. So just sort of pick up the edges of it. And all this should just be accessible. Yeah, so then we just want to fold that up as well so we can get to all these screws. There we go. So we can just get to these screws. That's all we need to worry about. So let's start buzzing these screws out. For these big two ones, these big two, you probably would, I think you're going to need these ones. Yeah, so you're going to need the size 0, I believe. Ooh, wow, they're very different screws. So as I said, each one of these components has a different screws. This one's a very large, very flat screw. Hang on. Let's zoom right in so we can get a decent look at it. So these are very big, very flat screws. I have no idea how to actually measure half these screws, but I'm presuming that they're going to be fairly different, if not unique, to each of these laptop pieces. It's not like you're going to be able to go into a hardware store, like a Best Buy or a Bunnings, for example, and find these sorts of screws, for example. I think these are going to be next size down by the looks of things. Yep. And these ones across the top here are of a much smaller size. Or that smaller size. Does that actually need to be removed though? Yes, it does. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So when you're actually pushing down on this pad here, this is your actual click button. So what's happening is this NFC module forms a backstop. Forms a backstop. So you can see that little nibble there, like bump there. That actually bumps against here. So this NFC panel is actually needed to click your left click on, which is different and unusual to say the least. Okay. Let's remove these screws, which again are a different type altogether. Okay. So that is all the screws for the mouse pad removed. So you probably just want to open up the keyboard just a little bit. Or sorry, open up the panel a little bit and remove your touchpad. Voila! One touchpad removed. Which would actually allow you to, in theory, replace it with other touchpads of the same size. So you could probably get like a black glass one if you really want to go extreme or something like along those lines, if you want to go like that. But again, it's fairly easily replaceable as it is. Okay, so moving up the motherboard, the next thing we'll take out is the hard drive, or in this case it's a hybrid drive. So I'm gonna do that once we come back because my camera's overheating again. And we're back. So next thing is this hard drive. Now I've just already removed these two very fragile connectors. These are covered in aluminium on one side, or like metal foil. One thing you need to remember though is that these cables are fairly delicate, so we don't want to go moving them or reefing them around too much. For memory, yep. So these are the small screws again, and there's just 1, 2, 3, 4 to remove. This one here, this fifth one up the top here, is taken care of much like the battery was by the screws in the case. So it's not, so make sure when you're putting the computer back together, you don't screw one into this one here. So I'll show you which one that is. It's the one way up in the back there. So it's this one here. We don't want to screw anything into that one. There we go. So we'll now take apart these screws. Now, whilst I have this hard drive out, I will confirm the thickness of the hard drive. So for those who are wanting to put very thick drives or even thinner drives in, can see what thickness this drive is, which is the stock drive, to make sure whatever drive you do put in, whatever it may be, an SSD for example, or a while ago someone was asking me about putting the WD black square drive in. We will now confirm what thickness this drive actually is, just to make sure that whoever does plan to do something like that doesn't have to worry about, because it would fit inside the case. It's more or less, will it fit around these cables is more or less the issue. So when you're removing this, again, you want to be careful to make sure that you don't do anything stupid. So there is, of course, a very long cable here, but fortunately enough, the connector for it is right there. So it's just this connector here. Sorry. So the connector that was right near that screw we were talking about before. Yep. So this screw that we were talking about before is the one for the hard drive. Fairly simple. Just sort of rock that out of there, and we shall be removed. So back out again. So that's the hard drive. This is a slim drive, Western Digital Slim. So presumably, if you grab the multi. Sorry about the background noise, I've had to turn on my aircon because it's getting that warm in here because of the camera work. So if we pull out the digital verniers, get them out. So we can see that this drive here with all the foil is a 7 as you can see, this drive measures 7.33 millimeters thick with all the tape and everything on it. That in inches, for those Yanks out there, is 0.288 of an inch, which works to be about 1/4 of an inch. So it is a thin drive, but you shouldn't have any issues at all putting a bit thicker drive in. So the 9.5mm drive should fit, but you want to watch. It's 3 focus long. Want to watch these cables to make sure everything fits. Just double check sure that make sure all that's right. So I'm gonna remove this off camera, and I'll come back and I'll show you what this all looks like underneath. Okay, look, back to this hard drive again. So what's in it out of stock? Well, what I got was a Western Digital Black 1TB. This is a hybrid drive. This is one of the sort of rare hybrid drive. It's a 1TB drive with a 16 gig NAND flash. that doesn't mean there's a 16 gig SSD on this thing. It means that instead of the buffer memory on this thing being a few meg, I probably got an example of that sitting around, it's 16 gig, which means that there's a very fast portion of the drive. So we'll do is bring it into focus. So there's a very fast portion of the drive. There's also, of course, the large storage. So if a file is under 16 gig per file or per job, this thing's going to be relatively fast. Also, this buffer is sometimes used as sort of a recent file storage or constant file storage. So in my case, when you actually the way it was set up from factory for me is that the operating system is inside that 16 gig because it's the most used files, of course. So that's the way it works. It is a slim drive, so you shouldn't have a problem with putting thick drives in here. Just gotta make sure that you watch the cables. So this is what drives in here. It is the Western Digital Black. It's a WD, as you can see, 10S12X is the model number. Let's see if we can't get a closer view of that. There you go. WD10S12X. Date of manufacture, 5th of September. Oh, it's made on my birthday. 5th of September 2013. Right. And you got your DCM, DCX, your current, just the usual shenanigans on the drive. Where are we? It's just usual shenanigans on the drive. And of course it just says Western Digital Slim on the side. So that's all there is to it. One hard drive down. The cable that connects the hard drive to the motherboard is actually fairly ingenious. So it has a standard SATA interface on this side and a custom interface on this side, and that's all it is. I have looked on eBay. These will cost a couple of bucks. So if you are planning to put another hard drive in, you might want to just pick up one of these, just in case you don't do the hard drive connection correct and you go screwing up one of these. Well, they're only going to cost you a couple of bucks a pop, so something to think about. Unfortunately, there's no real model number on it. The only numbers that are on this thing, if I can get them in focus, is that. So I don't know if it's going to help anyone who's trying to look for a hard drive cable, but that's all there is really to it. So that's the hard drive done. Let's zoom back out and refocus. I think there it's focusing. So next thing we'll remove is this side daughter board. So this contains your SD card, your headphone jack, your Ethernet, and one USB. So it's the same principle as the rest of the shenanigans. All we do, there we go. All we do is we go through everything we've got. Oops, sorry guys, just got to refocus some of the camera here. There we go. So it's the same shenanigans as everything else. Just the smaller screws, and we just go buzzing them out. Don't remember these being this hard to get out. Tight little sucker. There's just a few screws on this one. There's not that many really. Just got to watch it down the bottom here. Just got to watch it. Where are we? Down the bottom here. See where the arrow is? That's where you want to put a screw. But this one here, don't put a screw in it, please, because that one's again another one that gets taken care of by the case. Or actually, in this case, it actually gets taken care of by the speaker. So it gets screwed. The speaker gets screwed to this point down here. That's what the screw. That's what that screw hole's for. Now I have actually had this board out already to fix up my headphone jack, as I mentioned when I was pulling off the case. I have actually had to repair this already because I was an idiot when I was first trying to remove it and busted this completely off the board, as in it was just free hanging inside the port. So that's just something to think about when you are removing it. Is you've got to be extremely careful when you're removing the case to make sure you don't bust this off, or the power jack on the other side, for that matter of fact. Is that everything? Yep. Actually, all this does is just lift out. There's this one little connector here, which I'm pretty sure is just a power connector. Looks like it. Oh no, sorry, that's the. Oh, that's the virus. That's the assist button. So this little connector. I don't know if we can get this in focus. So the one just behind the SD card, this little connector here, that is for the assist button. So wow, this is really dark. So this is for the assist button that everyone seems to hate and loathe. So if you don't want to use the assist button, well, you don't have to. So that's just this little board. So I'll do a bit of an overview of this board now. We'll get it in focus. So of course you got your SD card, your headphone jack, your one USB, and then your floppy out sort of your alligator jaw Ethernet port, and your power switch as well, as all it is up here. Power switch and your volume up and volume down. So your three main switches on the outside of the board. So you got your volume, your power. Hang on. Let's see if we can get this thing in focus. There we go. So you've got power here, and then your volume toggle here. And if we flip it over, you've also got the Ethernet isolator as well. And then you use two connectors. So the way this little headphone jack solders on, let's see if we can get this in focus. There we go. Is you can see that there's little pads around the place. I've resoldered this one, it's quite easily tellable, and there's of course the other ones around the edge. So if you do happen to damage it, you can repair it fairly easily because the pads aren't that small. So if you've just got a normal soldering iron with a decently fine tip, you shouldn't have an issue. Also what's on here, if everyone can see it, is the actual sound chip itself. So what's coming over here, over these buses, these data connectors here, is just a straight out connection. So it's a straight out data, like digital data, probably even PCI Express data, and then that comes into this chip here, and then that goes straight to your sound. So that's a little sound daughter board. Well, I like to call it the more useful of the two daughter boards. So next board, next thing to worry about. So we're trying to keep moving across here. Is the RAM. I have got a couple of questions. What this black thing is for here is to stop this memory stick, which is just under here, the second memory stick, or the first, I don't know which one it is in the order, the boot order, but it's just to stop that memory stick under there from shorting out and doing sorts of crazy crap. So yeah, this just is there to stop it shorting out. Unfortunately, I can't show you where this actually sits on the case because I've got all the other parts on it, so it's just there to short it out, to stop it shorting. This one doesn't need it because where it sits inside the case, there is no metal there. There's no EMI or EMF shielding on that stick. So when you are doing the RAM, if you do a RAM upgrade, please keep this in place just to make sure that, just in case you do have any weird contacts or on this RAM stick, on your new RAM stick, just to make sure that that isn't an issue. Just make sure you always keep this on. That's just something to think about. So, as I said, my main review, these are 1600 megahertz chips. So there's two 4 gig in here. There's 1600 megahertz, pretty standard timings, 11, 12, and 4, I think. Yeah, so pretty standard timings. They're actually DDR3L. This is what this L means. Where are we? So this L here, what that means is DDR3L. So it is the low voltage stuff. So if you do want to make a RAM upgrade, make sure you get DDR3L and not just DDR3. On RAM stick. And this is the other RAM stick. Okay? And of course they're identically the same. And actually they're serial numbers. Yep, even down to the serial numbers. Always nice to see that you don't get mismatched kits of RAM in laptops. So, as we keep moving across, next thing you'll come across is the Wi-Fi module. Now I'm totally out of focus on that frame. So the next thing across is your Wi-Fi card or Wi-Fi module. This is the short Wi-Fi module. Now I've already upgraded this to the AC Wi-Fi. The stock one that you get in it, if I move the camera, because it's behind in my amazing drawer of stuff. Okay, so let's set that up there. Okay. So the normal one that you get in the laptop from the factory normally, I think this is universal, but please correct me in the comments below if I'm not. It's just a standard, pretty standard little chip. Come in focus. So this is the standard wireless and the 7260 wireless. Like, it's pretty standard. And this only goes up to N, and this is only single band N. So, we will focus that back down into here, roughly enough. So, this one that I've installed for myself is a C Wi-Fi. So this goes up to the full 1300 megahertz. Sorry, not 1300 megahertz, 1300 megabits Wi-Fi speed. So this is a full speed stick. Why aren't you coming out? Yeah, it's being a pain. Thank you. I got stuck to the bottom. So this is a much nicer chip. You can pick these off most websites for around 50-60 bucks. If I can get this damn thing in focus. Thank you. So this is an AC7260. This is a drop-in replacement for this laptop. In North America, I think you can get it with this pre-installed, but I'm not 100% sure. In Australia, where I bought this laptop and where I live, it came default installed with the N Wi-Fi. So next thing out of the laptop done. So yeah, just something to note for those who are interested in upgrading the Wi-Fi. Just look for a 7260 series from Intel Wireless, and it will drop in and work, not a problem. You'll of course have to do a driver update and a driver reinstall, but that's like literally the only thing you have to worry about is just the drivers. That's it. So while I get reset up here, I will turn off the camera and I'll be back in no time. Okay, then, so I'm back now. So, next thing, as we move down this end of the board, is the heatsink assembly. So this is the fan and the two heat pipes plus the two, what you call almost heat sinks, all the main thermal contact points for the CPU and GPU respectively. So this long one here is the CPU. It is a Haswell chip, 4200U, if you guys are wondering which it is. 4500U, my mistake. 4500U or 3200U, depending on what model you get. This is the spec'd out and a half version. Here is a 735M, not a great chip, but still very respectable in its own right. Paired with a full 2 gig of VRAM. Yes, I said 2 gig of VRAM. So, very nice. So, we'll start pulling this thing apart. There are little numbers on these pads, on these like screw numbers. Yep, when you're undoing them, you reverse that order, and when you're doing them up, you basically screw down by the numbers. So it's like, it's got color by numbers, while it's unscrew and screw up by numbers. That's all you have to worry about. Now this is not really the way you're meant to do it. You're meant to sort of loosen one off, then loosen another off, then loosen another off, and then sort of go back to the first one, and then sort of like jimmy your way through. You're not really meant to do the whole screw in one hit, but for the sake of time, it's just a bit quicker to do it this way. But yeah, you really should like undo one a little bit, then another, like you should go through the pattern a few times to make sure you're not putting undue or uneven pressure on any of the chips. Just, it's sort of a safety precaution, I guess. But anyway, let's continue to remove stuff. There's just one screw to actually remove the system. Oh, sorry, 2 screws. There's one right there, so there's one here, and there's another one hiding underneath the power plug. So if we just lift the power assembly out of the way, it's kind of just hiding underneath there. So we just want to remove that one, and the whole thing should just lift straight out. And the whole thing should just lift straight out. There we go. Oops, I missed another one. Sorry. So I thought there was 2, but some of them of course have this extra little bit here. For the higher models of the card, of this system, where they have, let's say, I think some of these came with a 710 and 720M GPU, only on the 735 or the highest end chips where you have this little extension to the heatsink assembly here. This is to cool the bit higher, a bit beefier power supply that is for the GPU. And there's a screw right at the end here that just fastens down some of this thermal pad and thermal gear right at the end. Okay, this should now come straight up and out. Yep, there it goes. So now that just removes, and voila. So you can see our CPU at the back here, and our GPU at the front with its 2 1 gig VRAMs over there. Actually, there's, yeah, so this is just, that's our VRAM at the end here. As you notice, there are thermal pads for the VRAM as well as some power equipment on each end. So I'll get this cleaned up and then we can have a closer look at the chips themselves. Okay, I was just going to take a bit of time out from pulling apart the laptop and talk just about the heatsink assembly by itself, because frankly it needs to be done. There's a few things you can replace or repair or do a bit of maintenance on with this system. First of all is of course the fan. You can take that off and replace that if you want. For those who really want to know what it actually is, I don't think we can get much of a close up on this one. There you go. There's the model number for those who really want to know what it is. I'm not going to read that out seriously. I'll put it up the right way so you guys can read it a bit easier. Guys and girls can read it a bit easier. But there's the big old serial number for this exact fan. And no guarantees that if you buy this exact fan and you have a slightly different model of laptop, it ain't gonna fit. So something, a word of warning. Something like that. Other thing you need to sort of worry about is all these thermal pads. If you are going to take this off, just don't put your fingers on these thermal pads. Try to keep your fingers off of them and stuff like that. These ones here can be cleaned up fairly easy. These are the main contact surfaces. When you are removing these heat sinks, it is kind of advised that you clean this off with isopropic alcohol or any form of really like rubbing alcohol, for those out there who don't know what isopropic alcohol is. Or like general like medical wipes, stuff like that will work very well, and that will clean off all the gunk and residue on these. These actually don't directly connect onto the chips on the board, which we'll have a look at in a bit. So first things first is we'll pull apart this fan. Not necessarily pull it apart, but pull it off. So there's just a few screws around the edge that we want to pull off. And of course it's going to be the finest of the screws that we have, and they will have a bit of resistance on them, so this is something to think about. They are fairly tightened down a little bit. You can see already on this fan I've done a little bit of a mod to space the fan off so it doesn't get starved of air, which does make this fan run a bit quieter, which is always a nice thing. And just generally a less whinier sound when the fan is going. So it's a mod you can do. I think I have a video, I think I've got an independent video of it already up, for those who want to have a look at it. So once you've removed the screws, I think I must have missed one. Is that it? I'll be a second, I gotta work out if I've actually taken all the screws. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. So what you're gonna have to do to get this fan out is there is. See if we can get this in focus. Okay, hang on. So there's a little bit of tape here that you're gonna have to slice, and there's this big long chunk of tape all the way around here that's all gonna have to get either pried off or cut or something like that. You're gonna have to remove this here and this bit here to get it off. Now I'll do that off camera and come back when I've got all that cut. Okay, so I got the fan out, and one thing to say though, the blade design is really interesting. You can see there's sort of this sawtooth design to each of the blades. They're actually kind of pretty. So all these are doing here, these sort of sawtooths, is making sure that this blade doesn't flex. So this acts as a ring, like a stability ring, to make sure that the blades don't flex, because they are fairly, like they are fairly thin and flimsy, and they would be fairly flimsy without that support material. If people are wondering how this sort of fits into into here, it just sort of sits there and there. You just gotta loosen off the tape on the top, cut that little piece of fiber tape here, and just lift it out. It just pops out quite easily and quite nicely. It's not really an issue. So the next thing to talk about, of course, is the heatsink assembly itself. Big chunk of copper. These will run you a bit of money if you do break them, so be gentle with it. So of course you've got your heat fin assembly here. So this is all your fins and everything are down this end. You can't really see them that well, but you can just see them in there. And of course you've got the two massive heat pipes. So that's really all there is to it. So it's a fairly simple setup. Okay, so now we've got the heat sink done. I'll put this back together, off camera of course, and then we'll go back to looking at the motherboard itself. So I've removed the sort of metal tape shield to show you what's actually under here. So of course we have the NVIDIA 735M GPU, and we of course have the, in this case, 4500U Intel CPU. And there's its GRAM, that's the VRAM, and we've got this Novetta, this other chip up here, which is just to do with HDMI and all other peripherals basically. So this is what the chips should look like if you're trying to reapply paste. There shouldn't be anything around them. Again, I just used little cotton tips, which I actually haven't got all the crap off this one yet. There we go. That's a little bit better. So you can just use normal cotton tips. Just make sure they're like lint free. Like, don't leave anything behind. Of course, it's better to actually use proper, like really nice stuff to make sure that you don't do any damage to the chips. I'm just using a little bottle of pre-distilled, little dropper bottle of isobutyl alcohol that I've pre-distilled, but that's just that way of doing it. So there's of course a bazillion and one ways of putting on thermal compound. I'm going to do my way, but again, everyone has their own way of doing things. For a chip like this that's so long and so big, you probably want to do what the line method, which is a pretty common method, where you just literally put down a line, not like a line of cocaine. And of course, these sort of small chips, you can just do a dot, or what's usually referred to as the P method. So what we'll do is I'll show you each one. Come on. This stuff's fairly sick. So the little tiny one here, you just want enough. That's probably too much, but that's okay. Like a little P dot. You don't want too much. His camera's getting in the way. And then for this one, you just want sort of a line. That will be it. There we go. And that's it. And then we just bolt the heatsink back down, and that will be it. So again, I'll do that. I should actually do that on camera. So whilst the heatsink's actually out, this is something that I don't like as a design decision from Sony, but I can understand why they've done it. To get the jack out, so if you do damage your power in jack, you will have to remove the heatsink to remove this safely. So we'll do that now to show you what that actually looks like. It's just two of the small screws. Yeah, one screw. And two screw. So there's a little bracket that goes over top of that. And of course then the power jack itself can get untangled. Sorry about that. That's what I get for living at a university dorm. So it's just a little, you could probably pick one of these up for like an electronics store. They're just a standard female jack that goes to a 4-pin connector. Pretty standard thoroughfare. Of course you can probably buy ones off eBay as well, if that's the way you wish to work. So that's a little power jack out. Okay, whilst I wait for the idiots downstairs to calm down, I'll just end the camera for the time being. Okay then, so last thing to remove before we remove the screen is of course the motherboard. This may take some time to remove because there's a lot of screws on it. So you got a screw here, screw over here, screw here. Actually, okay, there's only 3. Oh, I thought there was going to be a lot more. My mistake. There's only 3 to remove. So one over here. If you go, oh wow, I'm way off. One is over here. One is, where did I see the other one? Way over here in this corner. And where's the third one? Oh, and here, right near all those capacitors. Screw? Nope. Okay. And these are of course the smallest of screws as well, so you're going to have to use a really small one to get these out. This doesn't take too long. And number 3. So, with these 3 screws out, the whole motherboard should just drop out. There it goes. And that should just lift straight out. Oh, oops. So we have the display connector here, and the inverter power here as well. So this is the backlight power, and that's just the display, which we're going to have to... Oops. Okay, we're going to have to get our little lever tool out on this one because it's such a big connector. There's so many pins. It's a bit of a pain to try to remove. There we go. That's one side. There we go. As you can see, there's a lot of pins to this connector, so you're gonna have to be careful with it. Just to give you everyone an idea of how big that connector actually is. So, next thing's next. We just want to flip this over, remove the backlight connector, and remove the keyboard connector. There we go. One motherboard out. These motherboards, depending on what specs you get for the CPU and GPU, will cost about $800 a pop or more. I haven't actually done any research on it, but if someone wants to inform me in the comments below how much one of these motherboards would run someone, then you're more than welcome to go ahead for it. Here we go. I thought there had to be a bit more memory. So this is 1 gig of memory on this side, and the other gig in this case is actually on the reverse side of this motherboard. There seems to be other passives and stuff underneath there, and maybe some other stuff. Oh, and the bracket for the heats, for those things. So that is the motherboard out. Okay. What we'll focus on next is just removing the screen and all its associated parts. So to actually remove the screen at this stage, there isn't actually much that holds the screen in place other than 3 screws. And that will drop the entire screen away, hopefully. Now you will need the next stage up size screwdriver. So that's that one. And these screws are the same as the ones you took out of the feet. So the ones that are underneath the rubber feet, these big rubber feet when you're originally taking up the case, these screws I'm taking out now are the same to those original screws that you originally removed. So not too difficult to remove. After I get this out, I am going to have to rechange my battery again. God damn it. I brought my movie on an SLR. I don't have any issues. Okay, so that's those 3 screws out. So now we'll just open up the panel. Okay. We just want to start removing, sort of unthreading all these cables that we have here, and making sure that we've removed all the screws, which we haven't. So I thought there was only a few screws holding this thing in place. There's a few more. So just gently sort of massage this stuff out of place. So just unsnake it there. Okay, that's all that done. So I was missing 3 screws that were underneath these cables. So there's another one here, and another 2 here and here to be removed. Okay. And these also look the same type of screw, which they are. So all these screws that I'm removing from the monitor are the same, and they actually almost look like a standard screw. Oh, there's a bracket that's removed. Okay, so there is a bracket that does come off, so you're going to have to watch that. I presume there's probably another bracket on this side as well, going by the looks of this. Yeah. So on this side, there's 1 screw that holds in another cable routing bracket. Okay. Now that's all off. The keyboard assembly now comes off as well. So that is now the keyboard, the screen, completely removed from the baseboard. Now please make sure you put your screen in a safe place where it cannot be trampled by children, animals, or yourself. Because those screens are not cheap. I have actually priced out one of those screens and it costs about $800 for that screen, so please make sure that you do that. That you make sure you put it in a safe location. The last thing to get at is of course the keyboard. So I'll do that after I change the battery, so we'll be back in literally 30 seconds, or less, to you guys anyway. Okay, the last thing to do now is pop the keyboard out. When I say pop, I literally do mean is gently, sort of just gently lever this up, like that way, push this part that way, and the clip will come free. And you just want to gently do that across the back of here. All you do is just keep twisting and pushing, and all the clips will come out, like so, and the keyboard pops out. Very easy, very quick, very simple, and leaves absolutely no marks anywhere. So yes, it takes a bit of time because you literally have to strip the laptop down to every last little tiny component, but it means that you keep the computer particularly this bit, intact with no scratches or dings. Now when you're putting the computer back together, you can put this in last. That's not a problem. You can put the keyboard in last, if that's what you want to do. That's the way I prefer to take out the keyboard, but if you want to take it out using small, like trim removal tools, then go for it. Okay, so now I'm going to time lapse this and put this sucker back together. So without further ado, let's put this sucker back together. Okay, as always, welcome to the outro. So, it's back together, it works. So what do I have to say? I hope this video is helpful for everyone. If you have any comments or questions about anything I've done in the video, please leave them in the comments below, or you can ask them over at my Twitter account at FirebirdTech101, because I know some people don't like using YouTube comments. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment, share, whatever you like to do. And of course, as always, this is Nick from Firebird Tech. Enjoy.